I break your ankles if I post up, pivot. If I'm open and I shoot it, if not, then I dish it. Give it gold and I get it right back. Mismatch, took him right to the rack. Tell you haters, get off my back. Hit a ref, blow the whistle, and won in fact. Ain't no D'ing me up when I jump like Scotty just beat.
Now, there's always the conversation of what's a bad loss. Who is considered a bad loss? St. Mary's lost to LMU last year. I would not have considered it a bad loss, but the computers consider it a bad loss because their RPI was above 100. Which is why this brings me to this conversation about St. Mary's. They play Utah State in Logan tonight, and one of the things about Utah State is it is always tough to play in Logan. It's always tough to play at the Spectrum. And Utah State is not a bad team. They're not as good as they've been in years past. They didn't make the NCAA tournament last year. They were in the CIT final. But they aren't that marquee team. They aren't in a conference that is very good. The WAC has been depleted over the past couple of years with a lot of the realignment. Utah State is unfortunately suffering because of that. At least their RPI and their status is going to suffer from that. Their RPI last year, even when the conference was a little bit better, was 134. That's not going to be that's not a good win. It's not a bad win. There's no such thing as a bad win. A win is a win. But a win like that, it's a win. It doesn't do much for your profile. It's not going to make or break a season beating Utah State at Utah State. A road win is a good win, but it's Utah State. And Utah State doesn't carry the cachet of even if you were to beat a bottom of the road Pac-12 team. It doesn't carry the same weight, doesn't carry the same energy. Name recognition is actually important when it comes to Selection Sunday and whether or not you are going to be in or out. With St. Mary's, I've been concerned about their schedule from the very beginning. Utah State could end up being a kind of a trap game. It's a tough place to play. It's not a bad team, but they're not an incredibly good team. Their RPI does not reflect necessarily how good they can be, or I don't think our RPI will necessarily reflect how good they could be. And a potential loss at Utah State could be absolutely devastating for March. Now, yes, did St. Mary's make the NCAA tournament last year? Yes, they did. Have they won 25 games each of the last 5 seasons? Yes. They've been one of the better, more consistent college teams in all of the sport. But this is a team that also has not made consecutive NCAA tournaments ever. They went last year. Great. They missed the year before because they did not win the conference tournament and they did not have, to some people's opinion, not that marquee win. 2010, they went to the NCAA tournament. They won the conference tournament that year, so they were the auto bid. In 2009, they missed out, and they missed out because their strength of schedule, by some people's recognition, was not good enough. And 2008 was the last time that St. Mary's got into the tournament as an at-large. It's been a long time. Now, there's a good chance they would have made the NCAA tournament last year without having won the conference tournament. But we'll never know. And this is the test for this year's team. Not only do they have the target on their back for the conference schedule, is their out-of-conference good enough, or are they going to be able to pick up the wins necessary to be considered an at-large when they haven't even done that in 4 years? They haven't been an at-large or even been selected for an at-large in a long time. And a loss like a Utah State could be devastating. And next week when they get to the DirecTV Classic in Anaheim, who's to say that Drexel loss, a loss to Drexel, sorry, not Drexel loss, they haven't done it yet, but who's to say that a loss to them doesn't do the same thing, that a team who did who did not make the NCAA tournament last year, even though they had 27 wins before the tournament started. Who's to say that that doesn't end up being a, quote, bad loss? Who's to say that some of these others don't end up being a, quote, bad loss? It's not necessarily what I think are bad losses, because really what I think of a bad loss really doesn't matter. But if the computers say something's a bad loss, if the selection committee says something is a bad loss, it's what they believe is a bad loss. Losses to teams with RPIs greater than 100 are bad losses. Losses to teams at home are bad losses. Losses to teams in weaker conferences can be bad losses. And that's why this Utah State game is just as important as when they play Gonzaga, when they play BYU, when they end up playing Drexel. This game is just as important as any of the rest of them in significance. Utah State is not great. They're good, but a loss to them could be absolutely devastating when Selection Sunday rolls around, much like the BYU situation. You don't want to have to be that team sitting on the bubble. And now maybe St. Mary's doesn't have the problem. They go ahead, like I said with BYU, maybe they go ahead and win the conference tournament, and it's a moot point. You don't have to worry about it. But do not overlook this game. This game is going to be just as important as any of in the rest of the season. So if St. Mary's comes in and beats Utah State, fine, we're all good. But if Utah State is somehow able to pull off what I would call an upset win, St. Mary's could already be in trouble.